Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 5 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the podcast, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. Today's episode is sponsored by my 3D printing website. Visit dangly3d.com where you can get your hands on your very own, very cute Carmen Chameleon Karma Stories channel mascot. And yes, it comes complete with cookies. We've also got other things on there like dragons and keychains and fidgets. For a limited time, use code NEWYEAR2025 and get 25% off your entire order. That's NEWYEAR2025 for 25% off your entire order. Check it out now at dangly3d.com. Alright, on to today's compliance stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from NegativeNet4416. Customer wanted the computer back the way it was. I once spent quite a long time fixing a computer for a new client after the PC had crashed. The old hard drive failed completely. Fortunately, the customer had a basic backup file from perhaps a year or two ago, so we got most of the files back. However, I had very little info to go on. I didn't know the original version of Windows, no idea what apps they used, or what email client they used. I was met by repeated, "I don't know," and "it didn't look like that before." I continued to be patient, calm, and understanding, bringing up images on the internet to see if any start menus or apps looked familiar. In the end, I installed the latest and greatest of everything. I got it looking really good, easy to use, and all their apps on the start menu. They started getting pretty moody when we'd spent half an hour trying to recover the forgotten email password. Apparently, the security question wasn't something they'd had ever known. The partial recovery phone number wasn't theirs until, yes, it was their landline. Then they find the password in their book, even though that's not the one I used for my email. Except it is. Finally, I've invested enough time on this, I've asked all the questions, and squeezed out a few answers. The computer is all good. However, I get several calls over the next couple of days asking where some obscure apps have gone. Why did I remove them? Why have I not installed the dodgy cleanup utility they paid for? Why have I deleted the email contacts? They meant autofill, which obviously was empty. Where are the browser passwords? I go back and get a lecture on how it's just not good enough. They have been invoiced good money for the computer to be fixed, and frankly, it's not fixed. They just want it back the way it was. To be honest, I'd really undercharged for my time anyway, maybe 2 hours instead of the actual 5 to 6 invested, because no matter how hard I tried, it was never going to be a job they were completely happy with. Being younger and less experienced, I'd missed some potential red flags. The customer was slightly outside my usual area. They should have been able to find several technicians closer to them. The first phone call had been out of hours. They had been a bit difficult and uncooperative from the start. They had almost expected the job to not be good enough, and during the small talk, they'd already complained about their plumber, how many times they'd had to find a new cleaner for their home because they'd been let down several times. They hadn't yet paid the invoice. Get it back the way it was. The client popped out of the room for a couple minutes, and I was so fed up by this point, I took the side off of the case, removed the new drive, and reconnected the broken one, still in the case. I picked up my tool bag and met the client in the hallway. All sorted, it's back exactly as it was before, and don't worry, I'll cancel the invoice so there's nothing to pay. I made a dash for it. I have no idea what happened next. I ignored a few missed calls and then blocked the number. I thought about how I'd reply to any kind of email or online review, but I heard no more. I like to think that they got someone far less patient, more expensive, and got a worse result. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called DKB Geek. It says, "This is also loosely a good fit for choosing beggars. It's impossibly frustrating to do IT work for people who know absolutely nothing, but they're sure you're doing it wrong." Another commenter down below called DoFarmer9191 said, "I explained to them that it's going to be like the day you took it out of the box. I asked them, did it have your email already set up when you pulled it out of the box? No. I tell them, seriously, it did not. That's the way your OC will be when I'm done, back like when you took it out of the box. OP responded and said, I've learned now to set expectations as a matter of fact. I've set it up like a new computer, I've done everything I can to make it easier for you, so just spend a bit of time over the next few days getting it the way you want it. I'll spend a bit of time making sure their files are in the right places, apps are activated, etc. But if it looks exactly like their old setup, I'm more likely to get complaints that an icon has moved slightly or an updated app works differently. Even getting them to actively choose a new wallpaper seems to help with that. I feel like if these people were going out of their regular area to get OP to work on their computer, they've exhausted all the options in the area close to them, probably because they never paid the bill to those people either. So OP, I think you did the right thing here because I don't think you were ever going to see 1 penny from these people and they were just going to disappear. This story comes to us from Luna Thick. So I'm not allowed to sleep when I want? Okay then. This happened when I was living in a dorm. I explained to my roommates that because of my insomnia, I can't sleep whenever I want. I have to follow a strict routine and I sleep from 11 to 7. I asked them not to make too much noise when I'm trying to sleep. Previously, one of them decided it would be okay to play a song loudly at 11 while I was trying to sleep, which is why I felt a conversation was necessary. They did not like this, so they complained to the person in charge, who told me that the sleeping hours are from midnight to 6, and if I dislike that, I can leave, but I don't have the right to ask anyone to be quiet before midnight or after 6. Alright then. My roommates tend to sleep from 2 to 7, and also during the day from 3 to 5. Now, according to the rules, I have every right to be loud between 3 to 5, right? And that's exactly what I did. Every day when they wanted to sleep, I played music or talked to my phone or invited people over. They couldn't sleep anymore. So eventually they decided that they really need some sleep, and since I won't let them sleep during the day, they chose to sleep at 11, when I would also be asleep. But I wasn't done. You see, they already ruined my routine, so I can't sleep anymore, and keep in mind, I still have the right to be noisy from 11 to 12, and that's exactly what I did. Eventually we had another fight and they asked me to stop and promise to be quiet when I want to sleep. No one bothered my sleep after that. OP added an edit down at the bottom. It says, edit just to clear some things up. No, I didn't think of a solution before going to college. I didn't have insomnia before going to college. My first semester in the dorm was so terrible that I ended up with anxiety disorder that eventually caused my insomnia. Yes, I did continue living in that dorm, despite knowing how difficult it would be with my condition. Why do they have more of a right to stay there than I do? Not everyone is rich enough to get a house. No, I'm not a terribly nice person. No, I didn't use earplugs. I can't sleep with something in my ear. Yes, I should have been given a single room. I had a note from my doctor, but the few single rooms in our dorm were for the students who knew some important people in our college. It was a known fact. They didn't care about my problem. No, I don't understand why it was so wrong of me to expect people to remain quiet while I slept, but it was also so wrong of me to make noise while other people sleep. Double standard much? So I'm supposed to be quiet for people, but never expect people to do the same for me? No, I don't think I could find any compromise. I literally cannot sleep any other way. So what would the compromise even be? Okay, how about I only sleep 3 nights a week? Is that what you have in mind? This is absolutely absurd. The quiet time that this dormitory observes being midnight until 6 a.m. is just nuts. That's only 6 hours. Healthcare professionals recommend 8 hours of sleep every night, so 6 hours, especially in a dormitory where you're expecting to be learning during the day, is absolutely dumb. This story comes to us from Maka is awesome. You want all the shirts stacked on the edge of the table? Sure thing, boss. So I work at a clothing store on the sales floor. My job is basically to interact with customers to help them get what they're looking for and also fold, organize, and store clothes. Now, during my shift, there was this table that was just packed with clothes, with piles that went super tall. So I decided to start with that table. and as I was working, I noticed that there was a shelf under the table that was empty, and those shelves are normally used as storage for excess. So my plan was to make normal piles and then store the excess on those shelves, cause some of the rules of how things should look just say that you only need like 2 or 3 items of each size per pile, and to sort them from the biggest size at the bottom to the smallest at the top. And there's also like an unwritten one where if the pile ends up small, to then add more until it reaches to the bottom of the price sign. So I do that. I make piles that reach the bottom of the sign and then store the rest. Now, as I was starting to store the excess, one of the managers passes by and asks what I'm doing. And so I explain what I already said here, and he doesn't like it. He tells me to put everything on the table. So I explain to him why that's a bad idea, because it can make it harder for customers to get their size and easier for them to make a mess accidentally. But he doesn't care and just tells me to put everything back. So I do and just stack them, and the piles end up being very tall. I'm 6'2" and some of the piles reached my chest, but that's what the boss wanted. So I finished and went away to do something else. Now, for context, our store also has like a baby and toddler area, so obviously, parents sometimes bring their kids to buy clothes for them. After I left that table to work on something else, a father stood next to the table to wait for his wife, and he had his kid on his shoulder. I don't remember why, maybe it was to burp it or calm it down, I don't know, but as the father was swinging from side to side to calm the baby, he accidentally hit the side of the table, and some of the piles that were on that side fell down behind the father. And as if it was a sign of the universe to show I had the right idea, just as the father was turning around to see what happened, the baby puked, and because of the momentum, covered a lot of the shirts that were now on the floor. And so we had no choice but to throw away those dirty clothes now. And there were a lot. Plus, it got expensive, cause each shirt cost like $10, and there was easily like 10 to 15, maybe even 20 on the floor. We lost a couple $100 there. The worst part is that the first manager that just told me to stack them tried to pass the blame onto me, but I explained what happened to another manager, and they put the blame right back on that first manager. Okay, so I want to mention for this one that in OP's original draft of this story, they said at the end that they made the first manager pay for the damages, but then they added an edit down at the bottom and it says, "Edit, okay, I messed up here, they didn't make him pay." That was just something I misinterpreted from what I heard happened to him, because he did get called in by his superiors. Because apparently a lot of coworkers have had similar situations with that manager in the past and have been complaining about him. Yeah, OP got ripped apart in the comments by pretty much everybody in there about this whole making the other manager pay for the damages because of how illegal that is in the USA. And it is definitely illegal where I am in Canada as well. However, that doesn't stop it from happening. Like here in Ontario, Canada, if you work at a gas station, it's illegal to charge the person working the counter when they have a drive-off and somebody doesn't pay for their gas. But you might be surprised just how often this happens. In fact, I implore you to walk into a gas station and ask the person working behind the counter what their policy is there, because I bet you they'll say that they'll get charged for the drive-off. Make sure you let them know that that's completely illegal. This story comes to us from Shadva. Be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. I used to be a retail manager at a convenience store, and as such, I, not a morning person, would have to be at work at 5 a.m. Knowing how I myself felt about having to be awake at that hour, I would do my best to be cheerful and make my customers smile by lightly joking a bit and telling them to have a wonderful day as we finished our transactions. One morning, one of our regulars came in and I greeted her brightly as she approached the counter. She snarled at me that she hated my cheerful demeanor and that I always told her to have a wonderful day, then demanded that I never so much as smile at her again. I apologized for my cheerfulness and told her that I would immediately and permanently comply with her wishes. I proceeded to do exactly that. From that day forward, I treat other customers in my normal, cheerful way, but as she'd approach the counter, I'd stop smiling and bantering and drop into my natural resting bee face. I would complete our transaction, then cheerfully turn to the next person in line and continue my banter. After about a month of this, the woman came back in at her normal time and complained about how much she hated that I wouldn't banter with her like I did with the other customers, and how miserable it left her feeling all day. I reminded her of her previous demands and that she was getting exactly what she demanded. I also reminded her that I'd said that my lack of banter with her would be permanent. She continued to come in every morning at her usual time, and I continued to banter with the other customers, but would stop even smiling as she approached the counter, then turn to the next person in line and continue the banter. She continued to look miserable. Had she simply asked me to tone it down a bit or said she just wasn't in the mood for banter that day, I would have adjusted accordingly. Instead, she got exactly what she asked for. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Rook42. It says, "Customers with personality are my favorite. It gives me something to work with. The average Midwest nice customer is a smooth and pleasant transaction, and these are most of my interactions. But the unhappy ones can usually be won over by going the extra mile in service or taking time to show them you care, giving them a little extra attention. The more skeptical ones will be a customer for life when they realize you care. Sure, there are a few bad apples that expect you to do it all for free, who are certain that you broke it, it worked fine when I brought it in, or your competition will do it cheaper, but those are rare and can be dealt with using a firm no. But my favorites were the ones who would walk in and shout right away, 'Hey MF, what's a guy gotta do to get service around here?' I'd usually respond with a, 'Nothing, we don't serve your kind here.' OP responded to this one and said, 'The customers like your last description, I would usually laugh out loud at simply because that was the response they wanted when they did it. It was meant as a joke and I'd take it as such. The few that seemed to mean it in a nasty fashion would get a slightly different treatment.' Alright, well, I don't know about you guys, but I always felt that the best way to treat customers in the store that I used to own was to treat them just a step up from how they were treating me. So if they were really pissy, I wouldn't be pissy back, but I'd just turn it up a notch from where they were and get whatever they wanted done. If they were chipper, I'd be chipper back. My goal was always to make people smile though, so I'd add in something even to the really pissy people to try and make them smile, but with the really bad ones, if that didn't go over well, I wouldn't try it again." This story comes to us from Homer J. Simpson 3. "Turn the water on when using the bathroom." My department shares a downstairs bathroom with another department and 2 secretaries. The bathroom is 15 feet from one of the secretaries' desks and the customer service desk. When I started working here, I was told the upstairs bathroom is the crapper, the downstairs bathroom is the pisser. I adhere to this important policy religiously. After 4 months, my boss pulled me aside about the downstairs bathroom. He asked if I was turning the water on when I'm taking a pee, and I told him no. The secretary closest to the bathroom, Amanda, had complained that she could hear me pee and it made her uncomfortable. My boss asked me to turn the sink faucet on when I'm in there to appease Amanda. Today, I used the downstairs bathroom and turned the faucet on as required. As I'm peeing, I felt gas pressure build up. I took the opportunity to push the loudest and longest fart possible. It echoed like a bomb went off. After I finished, I cleaned up and walked out to see Amanda fuming. Within 3 minutes, my boss gets up to see her because she requested to talk to him. She complained about how she had heard me fart, and it was unacceptable in the office setting. My boss asked her, "Was the water running?" Amanda said, "Yeah, but..." My boss cut her off and said, "We're done here." He came back with a giant grin and gave me a high five. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Neil Simmons. It says, "Go to HR and ask why it is acceptable for someone to complain about someone peeing and farting in the bathroom. See if they have a policy about frivolous complaints. It would be different if you were farting each time you went by the person's desk, but this doesn't seem to be the case. Let her explain to them how she was uncomfortable by someone doing a normal life-appropriate bodily function." Okay, OP, hear me out on this one, but there are ways that you can make your farts silent. So I think you now need to crop dust Amanda every time you go by her desk. Maybe even get some of your coworkers involved in the process, like hiring a shit man. I mean, it really does sound like Amanda needs an aromatic attitude adjustment, don't you think? If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.